Well, hello, coaches. Welcome back. Coach KW here to talk about a subject that's near and dear to my heart, and that is dealing with keepers. This is actually going to be the first of a two-part video series on how we can manage keepers, what our expectations should be in the youth ranks, and then the second part will be how we train them, and even some video examples of some really high-level youth keepers and some regular quote-unquote town-level keepers. So again, we can manage those expectations as to what that should look like. Keeper is near and dear to me for a number of reasons. I played a fair bit when I was younger, although I was mostly a defensive midfielder, and my oldest son did. And at the end of this video, I'm going to relay a personal story about his experiences that I think really should shape and guide all of us as coaches as ways that we handle our keepers. So I hope you'll stick around for that at the end. So in this one, as I said, it'll be a part one. I'm going to talk about how we find keepers, how we get them to be ready to play in net, be comfortable in this experience. We're going to literally talk about goalies in the three stages of U10, U12, U14, and beyond. We'll look at them slightly differently as they get older, and how we manage them and manage their expectations, how we manage them within the team environment, and how we can find those players. And then also the expectations. What is it you should expect a keeper in these age brackets to really be able to do? Because I sometimes think that both coaches, teammates, parents, and the players themselves sometimes have some misconceptions of what it is that they really can do versus what's possible for them. So we'll look a little bit at that to make sure that everybody is on the same plane when we're talking about things. In part two, we'll look about how we train them, both within the team environment, because again, I really think it's important for every player to get a little bit of a flavor of playing in net, which we'll talk about in a second. And also we'll take a look at some video examples of both high-level club player at the U10, U12 level, what that looks like, and then we'll take a look at what that looks like with just regular, quote unquote, regular town type travel players. So again, we can really manage our expectations as to what it is we're looking for and what it is that we can expect them to do, and also what we can, expect them to strive for if they want to reach those higher levels. So we'll take a look at some video examples in that video too. As I've heard from a few people, even if you're subscribed, sometimes you're missing some of the videos. And usually I'm not one to ask this, but it seems like the YouTube algorithm might be doing some funky things lately. So maybe try the notification bell. I never really asked for that thing. I know a lot of YouTubers, that's part of their spiel. I never turn them on for people I follow. But it might be worth giving it a try so that make sure you don't miss part two. So let's talk about finding keepers. Some coaches, it's not a problem at all because they all come out of the woodwork, and other times it can be a little bit difficult. But at the youngest ages, especially U10 and up, when keepers are really supposed to be introduced, U9, U10, and beyond, I kind of have a pretty basic rule. If the player asks to play in net during a practice, then I'm going to expect them to play at least a quarter to a half of a game in a real game. That means if you've come to me, you're bugging, harassing, whatever it is you might do to me as coach, and say, coach, can I play in net? Can I play in net? Can I play in net? My rule to them is, hey, if you're asking to play in a practice, then I'm expecting you to play in a game, because that position is interesting, different. Lots of players are drawn to it. They want to try it. Maybe it's just as simple as much as, hey, I don't want to run today. Maybe if I ask to play keeper, I won't have to run too much. But again, that's my expectation. I tell it to them right up front. So many times players will go, okay. And then those few who were perhaps their motivations were less than altruistic, they say no. Now, I believe that every player should have a chance to play in goal for reasons that I'll describe in a second. So I will ask players to step in goal for certain drills and everything else, but I will tell them, hey, if I'm asking you, I am not expecting you to then play in net for me unless you come and ask me to do it. Because now this was coach initiated. I'm asking a player who's never done it, hey, do you mind standing in net for this exercise when we do this next thing? They may balk at it, et cetera, et cetera. My point being is, hey, it's practice. It's okay. I need you to do X. And, most of the time, especially younger keepers, what they're doing is restarts with the ball, whether it's a goal kick or they've collected the ball and they're restarting the play. And most of that is footwork. And that's what we're looking to do in a lot of our drills and exercises during practices. I say, and I've said it all the time, and I mean this for every position, but keeper especially, that you need to have empathy for the other positions on the field. And the best way to do that is to be put in those positions and play every single one of those positions as you're growing into the game. as a keeper, you really want your center backs to do something specific when you have the ball. You want your midfielders and your striker to do things as well. So, what better way for those players when they're in those outfield positions to have some thought to say, hey, when my keeper has the ball, I should do X, is to have a chance to have played as a keeper, to have that ball, and when you look up going, hey, I really wish my center backs or my winger or my midfielder, whatever, was doing X, Y, and Z. It's a great way for that transference, and it's a great way to start your players to really start to understand their roles on the field and to really ask the question constantly, how can I help? How can I help my teammates no matter what position I'm in? So that's why I find it super important that every player play every position, including goal. Whether that's in a game or not is different, but at least in practice. So let's talk about these in the three age brackets, U10, U12, and U14. So at U10, U9, and U10, I like to call these players keeper curious. They're curious about the position. Maybe, as I said, their motivations are built upon, oh, maybe I don't have to run as much, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of it is just, we play a lot of sports with our hands in the United States. So it's a position we seem to have some great candidates in. Whatever that reason is, it's a different sort of thing, and players are drawn to the uniqueness of it. You may have a lot of players that are curious about it. So we're just getting them exposed. Again, as I said in the previous slide, we want everybody to try it, but we're going to end up with a handful that will do it in a game. We want them to play a half a game at most, a quarter game at the minimum. And I say a quarter game at the minimum, in a U10 game, that should be 12 and a half minutes because of 25-minute halves. That's enough to get into a flow, to make sure your center backs and the rest of the team are comfortable with that player in the back. Anything shorter because of injury, can be a little choppy. So I say a quarter to a half a game if you've got players that are willing to able to do it. But the most important part is we're training soccer players, not keepers at this point, because again, most of their action is going to be with their feet or distributing the ball in one way or another. We'll talk about in expectations what you're going to expect that save percentage to be for a U10 keeper. I'll give you a hint, it's not that high, but you're going to have lots of goal kicks. You're going to have lots of ball clearances. And again, you're working or training on playing out of the back right away at U9 and U10 if you're doing it right. So that player is just another field player. They're being a passing option. They're playing back and forth. They're being a supportive agent. That's what you're looking them to do. So you're looking to find as much time in the field as possible. In the club environment, sometimes they even double roster those kids so that they get the same amount of game time in the field that you do as a keeper so that they don't fall down on their development. And I can talk to you a little bit about what that might look like from that personal experience at the end of the video. Okay, so at U12, players maybe start to play keeper as they get comfortable perhaps with that U10 time. Or maybe they played for a couple of years. So I start to like to call these players keeper comfortable. They're either old enough to kind of be like, I kind of know what I'm getting into. Let me give this a shot. Or they've been doing it for a little bit and they're like, okay, bigger net, et cetera, et cetera. Again, half a game at most, but there's another asterisk on this one. And this time, instead of a quarter game, I will give coaches passes on this one if you end up with players perhaps playing a full game every once in a while, or more likely a keeper who is in net in the second half, gets injured, and has to come out of the game, and now you need to put somebody in net. That player that played net in the first half that's in the field, I feel like it's okay at that point to turn to them and say, hey, I need you to go back in net and finish the game out, just because part of the flow of the game, the expectation, all the pressure that happens with that. It's not fair to just pluck somebody who's never done it for a while and throw them in there. So that's why I said that. We're still training players, but we're also starting to train keepers as well. A lot of 9v9, now that the build-out line isn't there, is still a lot of dealing with the pressure of the build-out and being more confident with playing those passes, especially passes into the middle of the field. So we are starting to do a little bit of both. And this is where you can start to find some outside resources to give these kids some fundamentals beyond what you can do perhaps in a team environment, because it can go a long way. And so whether it's, running a session or two outside of practice for all the keepers in your town/club in a certain age range or something. But again, finding a way to start to give them a little bit of keeper specific training that can just elevate them a little bit more, give them a little bit more confidence. Now's the time you can start to think about adding that on the outside for a little bit. So now at U14 or really U13 plus, now I start to talk about these keepers as keeper candidates. These are players that perhaps as they go off past youth soccer at that U14 level and they go off to high school and such, perhaps now these players have some of the attributes that they're going to need to be successful as they're older. And like it or not, their growth rate and really their terminal height is it's one of the most important pieces of this, because you can have a fantastically athletic player who positions themselves well and moves around and they have great hands. But if their terminal height, their top height is going to be 5'6", odds are in a full-size adult 8 by 24-foot net, they are going to struggle compared to somebody that maybe not quite as athletic as them, but is standing at 6 foot. And whether you like it or not, it's a huge factor in their success in future years is how tall they're going to be. There are some exceptions in the pro ranks, but they're few and far between. Most keepers, as you probably can guess, are big units. They're tall people, 6 foot plus, large wingspans, the whole 9 yards. And like it or not, as they get into high school and further, coaches are going to tend to go with those players beyond sooner than those younger players. And why it's so important that we have been training players the whole time is we want to make sure that those players are not at a dead end, that they focus so much on keeper that they've let their field skills atrophy so badly that when a keeper spot isn't available for them and there's only one or two on a team, they're not good enough to play in the field. Here too is now where you can really start to spend a little bit more time outside of practice and keeper specific stuff for those players who are really in that mold and perhaps have that trajectory that they need some more skills to handle the full-size field, the full-size net, and those things. So finding some outside resources to run practices outside of your team practice environment to really help your keepers hone on some of those skills is a huge benefit. Let's talk a little bit about setting expectations for our keepers here, because that's, I think, between them, the players themselves, their teammates, coaches, and even the adults surrounding the field. I think sometimes the expectation of what a keeper can do from based on what you see on TV versus what the reality is do not match. So U9, U10, I'll just be blunt. Most of the time, 99% of the time, if the ball isn't hitting the keeper, it's probably going in the net. There is a few that can handle a little bit more than that, but the vast majority, if the ball doesn't hit the keeper, it's going in or it's going wide. So I like to say that really the sphere of influence is pretty much the frame of their body and maybe their hands kind of tucked in and not much more. Anything beyond that is a bonus. And that's what I tell them all the time. You know, keepers are there to make the saves they should make, which most of the time are the balls that are going to hit them anyways. Anything beyond that is an absolute bonus, and you've taken away a goal that should have happened, and that should be celebrated. But everything else, that's kind of the way it is. At U12, that sphere of influence probably expands to half to full of their wingspan, how far they can put their arms out. The net has gotten bigger at this point, so much bigger in many cases, because most play on a 10 by 6 net for U10. And now at U12, that net can be anywhere from 18 and a half to 21 feet wide and 6.5 to 7 feet tall. In my town, we have the full big size 99 7 by 21s. Most of the towns we play in, it's the slightly smaller nets. But either way, those 10 and 11-year-olds look tiny in that net most of the time, except for, perhaps those older sixth graders that have finally grown up. Positioning and some other things really come into play here. But again, about the wingspan of that player is where you expect them to probably stop most of the balls. Anything beyond that, it's going in the net. And at U14, you can start to expand that sphere a little bit more to the wingspan plus maybe a half. If you've got a really exceptional keeper, maybe it's twice as far as their arms reach out based on positioning and their reflexes and such. But now they're in adult full-size nets. So you're talking about 12-year-olds, U13s, in an 8 by 24-foot net. That is an enormous space when you think about most adult keepers are 6 foot plus. So again, expectations. Most of the time, these players are dealing with restarts or the ball hitting them. Anything beyond that is a bonus. For young players and all keepers, I always tell them, 7v7 is the perfect example. I tell these keepers who are a little bit nervous about trying, like, hey, 6 other players have to screw up before you have anything to do with the play. So If you're the last line of resort, you can look at them and say, hey, how did six of you screw up before it got to me? And that goes, you can, extrapolate that all the way 99, 11 v 11. But I think having that mindset is really helpful and healthy for both parents, coaches, players, and the players who choose net to understand, you know what? I can only do what I can do. Okay, so I'll end with this personal story, as I mentioned. My oldest son, he went off and played club at the U8, U9, U10 level, 7v7. And he ended up also playing goal. It's something he really loved to do. He spent a lot of time practicing it, but credit to his club coach. He made sure that he got as much field time as he did in the net. And that's what I talked about early on. He actually was double rostered. He played for the two team in addition to his team so that he could play half the game in the net, half the game in the field, and then combined with the two games, he had a whole game experience with both. But during practices, it was 99% field play or play with their feet. And honestly, I can say that my son was probably top five keeper in the state. He was well known by just about everybody in terms of him playing net. But again, 7v7, 8, 9 years old, no big deal. Moved to 9v9. Now he's still playing keeper for the club. The team he's on ends up being ranked #1 in the state. You can say what you will about rankings. That's just the fact was that that's where this team was ranked. He's now probably top 3 in the state, maybe even 1 and 2. Well known, well on the path. Academies looking at him, the whole 9 yards. But again, still playing half a game in the field and half a game now playing midfield most of the time as an 8. Second year of 99. This is way back before when teams would be pre-MLS, but we'll say pre-MLS is what the equivalent was. Gets recruited by a bunch of different teams, picks the team he wants because of the coach that's going to be coaching it. They recruit them as his #1 keeper, and he gets his spot, and he tells me, and he tells the coach before the season starts, hey, I don't want to play net anymore. I'll be a second or third keeper, but I don't want to be in net. A little upsetting to the coaching staff who picked him to play net, said, well, you have a roster spot. You'll have to earn your spot. First, right off the bat, starting winger, ends up being the team leader in assists for the entire year. And that includes the fact that he didn't play the last month and a half because he broke his leg. So, really successful season. But I will tell you, like, what he told me about why he stopped wanting to play keeper. And that was when he was playing 9v9, it started to go from, hey, you're going to play only half a game to, hey, it's a big game. I need you to stay in the net the whole game. And he would like, once in a while be like, okay, this is okay. But it kept starting to happen more often, more often. And he really was like, hey, the deal was half and half. I don't need to pick until at least next year. So what's going on? And in the end, it's like, if you're forcing me to choose, I'm going to choose the field because I feel like there's more expression for me. I really like it. And there'll be more opportunities for me versus, 1 or 2 keepers on a team. And that's why he changed. But again, credit to his earlier coaches. He was able to step right out of that role into a starting role pre-MLS. Fast forward a number of years, he's U16, U17, he's MLS next center back. We're in that college recruiting range. He's been captain, like really top player for all his teams. And he was able to do that because his early coaches made sure not to shirk their responsibilities about him continuing to develop his field play so that later on, whether or not he wanted to play net, he'd be ready. He's 6'1", like he fits the mold. He could play net whenever time he wants, and he's had to go in an emergency basis. It's a great option for a coach to have when you have a keeper or two and somebody gets injured and somebody can't make the game and then the one keeper gets hurt, that that you can take a kid on your team and be a decent player in the net. But that's his story, and that's why I've heard multiple stories about this over time. Matt Turner didn't stop playing keeper till he was 14, and he played in the English Premier League, and he's one of the starting keepers for the U.S. men's national team. It's not too late to step into that role, but it is too late to not learn the field skills so that you have options as you get older, because sometimes those options either you choose or those options get taken away from you, as I said before, if you end up being 5'6". So again, I'll leave you with that. I hope that, can resonate with you and make some sense about why I'm so passionate about making sure that players really are players first and keepers second in the youth ranks. That's all I have for this one. Keep an eye out for the second part of this video. We'll talk about training and some technique and all that sort of thing. But until next time, hope to see you out in the fields real soon. Bye-bye.